There are a few seats. I probably didn't have to put out that free pizza inside sign out there because I thought it was looking a bit thin earlier. So if anyone wants to grab a seat while I set up, that's fine. We're really building a bridge here for you, because just keep in mind a couple of things that San said to us. Is it the practice that needs working on, or the knowledge and understanding of the practice? So I'm going to come to that in a minute. And in terms of attitudes influencing the government and other decision makers, where are they coming from? Which part of the community, the wider community involved or not? So it's all about perceptions, I think. I had an experience, you all saw the PM and our Minister for Agriculture out in the rain, I'm sure a couple of weeks ago, when Barnaby Joyce got completely covered in mud. At a similar time, this is about perceptions, I was talking to some farm foresters, because that's a big part of what we do. We have lots of people growing trees on farms and interfacing with their livestock and so on. And I was talking to this particular farmer who was leaning on his fence line with his neighbour, and I said, gee, that's great rain we're having, isn't it? But as we all know, it's a very strong heritage, a very respected heritage, so you don't let galloping optimism trump potential pessimism. So he said, well, yes, it's good rain, but I didn't get as much as my neighbour. And I said, wow, that's localised, that's amazing. How is that? He said, well, he's got a bigger farm. So, perceptions and responding to which society. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, well, this is going to be... No, I can't get to that slide before I do this one. The reason that this is really, really important to us, and I'm so pleased you're all here today, and everyone in our industry is always filling these sorts of sessions when we get together in the forest sector, is because of this. This is our vision statement, which 10, 20 years ago might have only had economic participation up there, but absolutely interwoven into what we do, as has been mentioned, and has been mentioned a lot actually in the last 24 hours, is this public opinion of what we do. And it's going to go to the next story I want to tell. You probably, when you read the subtitle for what I was going to talk about, probably imagine I was meaning, which society responding to which society. You probably thought I meant these societies, across our sector responding to this society, okay, which is one way we could have gone. But actually it's not, because I think there's something far more sophisticated and challenging going on than that. And it might be because I've got teenage children, and we'll come to that shortly. But I have children, we live outside town, and they don't think this, but as you all know, I think in this room, I'm pretty sure you all know that most kids think these things come from that, right? You've seen that in the newspapers, and they think that this stuff grows here. And that's pretty well known, and there's numerous studies. I don't know why I made that wobble twice, just because it was amusing. There you go. Yeah, you're right. See, one of my little kids showed me, and I kept using it. They said, that's too much. But the reason that's a challenge, it's always amusing when you read those stories about what kids generally in the Australian community think about rural commodities. But actually there's something really, really troubling going on there, because arising from that misunderstanding or lack of understanding about what we do is developing what I think is probably our largest challenge in terms of social licence across the whole sector. But I particularly represent the forestry industries of Australia, and it came. All of my fears in this area, I suppose, were manifest and became live and true to me when I took my 16-year-old, or he took me, to see this film. You've all seen it, haven't you? And so, no, come on. Who hasn't got kids? Who hasn't seen it? This is Avatar, okay, James Cameron's film of 2009, largest grossing film ever in history when it came out. In the storyline, for those of you who haven't seen it, but just quickly, there's a planet that is inhabited by these folk, and they live in a very large tree, which is their home tree, and they are completely at one with nature. They don't seem to use any natural resources, though I note they do seem to wear stuff, but let's not cross those theoretical problematic bridges. But they have a big mining company who's trying to take over or get to minerals in this planet, and there's all sorts of trouble and strife that goes with it, but it ultimately ends in the rapacious mining company blowing up the home tree and destroying this very, very large tree, which says this is all great fun to watch with my 16-year-old kid, because he says, this is really good. And James Cameron did a lot of interviews at the time, saying, bear in mind, this highest grossing film of all time, and this is largely our kids who are watching this. And James Cameron said, this is not somewhere else, this is Earth. And he's got quite a movement going now around Avatar, and to do with, which is potentially some marketing, but I'm sure there's also quite a bit of Hollywood belief tied up in it, that there's a despoiling of natural resources, that the commodity industries of the world haven't got the ability to manage their take, if you like, their use of the interest rather than the capital of the planet, which is what we're trying to do all the time. So that's the challenge, and the real challenge, I think, becomes one, as I said, as Sian said right at the beginning, about it leaves us inevitably to this question: is it the practice that we're going to work on, or the knowledge and understanding of the practice? Now, if we allow ourselves, in forestry, there's some temptation among some of those who I work for to try to meet the Avatar view of the world completely. Just that'll be the route of least conflict. And these folks often have part of our commodity, part of our value chain that isn't as contested space, and they're quite keen to sign up to what I call the PFFS blue tick. You'll start to see this on some packaging near you. Pandora is the planet that they come from. So it's the Pandoran Fishing, Farming, Forestry Standard, which is going to enter, I'm sure, the lexicon shortly. It'll be one new standard. It's a joke, please. It's not going to happen. I'm really worried now, but it could happen because that's if we were to adopt those sort of standards, well, we've just got to close all of our shops, all the people who are representing commodities in this room. So what I wanted to really say quickly, and I know we're going short of time, is what's the view like from Pandora back to Earth, and how do we deal with it? The view is what I've been told once or twice. This is the most blunt form it ever came to me at, but I get it in various forms from folks who I think would sign up to the PFFS. Was that enough Fs? Felling a tree is the same as harpooning a whale. And also, by the way, once you cut the tree down, it's like a balloon and all the carbon goes out of it. Now that's very difficult to deal with, and in my view, it's not the place for at least AFBAR to engage. What we need to do is, because it's a no-win, there's just no place to engage in that. There's no place to go. What we need to do is make the case, which comes to Sian's second point about the knowledge and understanding of the practice need to be understood better. And the case, and this is probably my earlier point and my macro point and my talks point about the society we're talking to, the case is no longer the case it was. When we started drop right down to forestry for a minute and forest products operations rather than the rest of the sector, when forestry started, this is the stuff that you could make your case on. So, it was pioneering spirit there. We built the nation. That's why we planted all those trees. That's actually why the state governments planted all those trees in the first place, because we wanted to have a reliable source of building material for our cities. And we built the nation, and it was hard and honourable work. That's been it right across the sector. But it's not really like that anymore. You can't just argue that case in a city. If you're on TV or doing radio as I do, and you try to have that argument, it's like yeah. There's a lot of industries that would make that sort of claim. But what about right now? What are you doing about the land now? So I got a bit of work done, and I hasten to add it's only preliminary work. It's not a deep dive into this. But I asked I asked a pollster to gather some data for me about where could we look for higher marks from the city, basically, to be blunt about it. What does the city give us marks for? And it was interesting what the answers came back, and I think it probably would translate right through the sector, though we were specifically about forestry. The first was for the industry. So you do still get a tick for that. There is still a residue, a latent, if you like, and you saw it in one of the slides, I think was put up about the value of timber. There was a very high acceptance of timber as a product. So there is a tick for the industry. It's not all bad at all, that's for sure. But there was a couple of ticks. So it was much more support for the fact that you're creating regional jobs. And that was quite interesting. So the idea that we were able to put food on the tables of those regional communities in a way that most of the large city operations just can't, came in for 2 ticks. And this was the one that kind of surprised me. It's a bit blunt in ABARES, and where we're all focused on the land, but one of the groups that they talk to about this sort of thing said, oh, look, those rural towns, they don't look real great to live in, and I'm glad they do, so I'm happy to support them because they'll live there and keep those towns going. And so I thought, oh, right, I grew up in those towns. I thought they were pretty good. But that was the tick that came through, triple ticks for that. So sustainable country communities. There's a sense that, and it's especially in Australia, I think, there's a sense that it's not all that easy to keep our rural communities sustainable, that they have all sorts of difficulties and struggles with their industries. And so it's almost in spite of what we do, in a funny sort of way, that we get all these marks for being the sort of sector that sustains the rest of Australia, because there's a sense that they don't want everyone to come to Sydney and Melbourne. So what do we look for then? Where do I go? This is the sort of stuff I go to, and I'm trying to persuade the Pandora crowd that what we do isn't like harpooning a whale. I shouldn't really say that too, because that's mixing up the message, but it's not. This is the sort of area that we can go to where we can have a dialogue and where we do find some agreement, as well as those other marks. So bushfire control seems to be quite a good place for us to engage, and people accept that if you don't have the services that go with forestry, you probably lose a lot more bush because no one's there to put it out when it starts and that sort of thing. The multi-use bush access, there's an awful lot of residual goodwill that exists in our communities about the fact that we shouldn't just set aside areas for no use at all. Hopefully, cross your fingers, but it usually happens, they go up in a large bushfire anyway, but hopefully to be a kind of cathedral in the future. But we should have multi-use access to our forests. That gets a lot of ticks. Year-round jobs in the country, as I said, that resonates very strongly because everyone knows that whilst tourism jobs are terrific, they do kind of come and go with the season. Ecosystem services is kind of a new one that's come into play. It started in Europe and it's becoming stronger over here now, which is this notion that it's, again, multiple community benefits from forestry. So you manage your biodiversity and you manage your access for picnics and you manage your water purification and your catchment areas and that sort of thing, landscape sort of services. Carbon storage is another one, and you'll see me talking quite a bit about this from now on. I've been doing so for a while, but we are very much arguing that rotational forestry, actually, as the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change says, over the longer term stores you more carbon. If you take into account the timber products that's here, we're always tap timber, but I'm struggling. My glasses. That stores timber products. As long as you count the carbon stored in products as well as the rotating forestry, then you store more carbon over time. That's what the international scientists say. So that's something that we get a lot of marks for, and we work with the community on our messaging on that, and sustainable best practice. So none of this is an excuse for poor practices in any field of our commodity industries. It's actually a given that none of this, you can't get away with any of these arguments if what you're doing is just, it doesn't pass the pub test, as we would say, in terms of being sustainable and well managed. That's our latest little foray into this conversation. Can anyone think what that's called? It's quite a good little gag, I think. That's called the carbon cycle. Yeah, thanks. So again, it's just something that with the support of FWPA, one of the RDEs that was just mentioned, we produced to start this conversation and help emphasise this notion that forestry and forest industries, through the storage of carbon in the products and through what we do in rotational forestry, actually has a large part to play in that debate across the globe and about Australia's position in a globally carbon-constrained economy. And so that's really all I had to say there, Mick, was really to draw out that idea that when we're talking about which society are we trying to persuade or trying to win over, it's not the same old battle lines. Really that's something that I've tried to advocate across our industry for the last year or so, that if you're in a rip and you're trying to swim to the beach, that's not going to work real well for you generally. You've got to kind of go sideways. And there is a lot of good territory to go sideways, I think, in what we do, underpinned by sustainable management practices across the board. So thanks very much.